I'm Jerry Evans. I've been connected with the water industry for 40 years and I've designed many things for the water industry and was runner-up in the Tomorrow's World competition in 1987 and also runner-up in the water industry Hydro Awards in 1995. Today I want to talk to you about the 8 million substandard meters that we've installed over the last 20 years with the knowledge of the water industry and also of politicians. I'm not very good at this video. It's the first one I've done, but I'm not trying to win an Oscar and I'm not trying to win the Laurence Olivier Award. I'm trying to inform you of what's happening. The video has been made for 6 groups of people. It's been emailed to every member of Parliament. Secondly, it's a message to all the governments throughout the world, especially those in developing countries such as India, China and Brazil. I want to persuade them to avoid the mistakes we made in the UK and to stop buying substandard water meters that can break down after a few seconds after they've been installed. Thirdly, it is hoped that those who were in the industry and were made redundant a few years ago, knowing what they do about water meters, will speak out. Fourth on the list is the public who are footing the bill. Fifth, to inform the meter company shareholders who are selling these substandard meters all over the world. Perhaps they'd like to stop selling them. Finally, at the end of this recording, I have a message to the many thousands of individual inventors in the UK that get no help with their inventions from the government, whichever party is in power. The water industry has had problems with metering since it began 20 years ago. Tens of thousands of meters have been breaking down and under recording due to small particles in the water. I offered designs that would have prevented this, but no one would listen. In fact, every time I showed them improved designs that solved the problem, the water companies would claim it's no longer a problem. It wasn't true. Recently I read on the internet that the situation is so bad now that water companies have a policy to replace their entire stock of domestic meters 2, 3 and 4 times in 20 years. I investigated this and one water company confirmed they had a replacement program of every 12 years. In between that 12-year period, meters would still break down, so it wouldn't solve the problem. I've been informed that the water companies are afraid to complain about the performance of meters because the meter manufacturers would threaten to pull out of the UK. Does this mean that if China, India and Brazil or other developing countries complain about meter performance, would they pull out of these markets? If it's true, the world's water industry is being blackmailed by multinational meter manufacturers. What's happening in the world? Are we the puppets of multinational companies? Are they the new dictators, or is this a new democracy? Governments are supposed to stop this sort of thing, so why don't politicians do something about it? I strongly advise the governments of developing countries who are purchasing large quantities of water meters to ask for performance details of the domestic meters before buying them. Make manufacturers obey the rules, otherwise your country will have a much bigger problem than we have, especially in India, China and Brazil. A few months ago I designed my third and best solution to the problem of particulate matter. But suddenly, like a miracle, the problem has begun to evaporate again. This is nonsense. The truth is, so many substandard meters have been installed in the system, it has become an embarrassment to the water companies. They are on contract for hundreds of thousands more and installing thousands each week. They are afraid the public will find out. The main principle before any product is given approval by British, European or international standards is it must be fit for purpose. Not one of our 8 million domestic meters is fit for purpose. This clause in any standard should be legally binding. For example, if a meter company claims their meter is manufactured to EN 14154, it must be fit for purpose. If the manufacturer claims it is approved or quotes it in their literature, that should be legally binding. If the meter is not fit for purpose and claims to be to a British, European or international standard, that is fraud and a criminal act. The product must be withdrawn. All mechanical meters are affected by particles in the water supply. These particles get into the measuring chamber, causing it to stop or run slowly. This means that the meter is under-recording the water going through the meter. There are trillions of small particles in the water systems in the UK and across the world. The only way to prevent particles affecting the measuring chamber is to stop them getting into the chamber in the first place. Fit for purpose means that whatever product is being certified by standards authorities, it must work equally as well when used by the end user as it does on the manufacturer's test rig. The product must be designed and tested to work reliably in the same environment in which it will be used. That is not the case with water meters. Now, there is a CE emblem on all European products, and that says the term CE marking means that a manufacturer has satisfied the IVD directive by ensuring that a product conforms to the relevant essential requirements and that it is fit for the intended purpose. This is not a life-threatening situation. It's a quiet little scam that has cost the public in the UK tens of millions of pounds over a period of 20 years. No one has had the nerve to talk about it openly except myself. In so doing, I've made myself the most unpopular person in the water industry, but that's life. If allowed to continue, the situation is going to get worse, not better. The reason this scam has gone on so long is because the public doesn't take any notice of water meters. They just assume that if it isn't working, they're getting their water for nothing. That isn't true. The water companies are not philanthropic societies. They are profit-making companies that sell water. Despite what some people may think, water doesn't fall from the sky and get to your taps free of cost. It's a long process and costs a lot of money. There's also a lot of infrastructure to maintain, and that costs money. Water that isn't recorded on the water meter is estimated as a loss and charged to the rest of us as leakage. One meter manufacturer correctly states in their sales literature, estimated leakage figures are no substitute for accurate metering. This means you can't be sure that the estimates are correct. Most people ignore their water meters because, unlike gas or electricity, no one can get hurt. The worst thing that can happen is someone may get wet, but people need to take more notice of their water meter. The present water meter is a poor design, and I have a better solution that solves the problem. It is a domestic meter that is the only one in the world that fully complies with British, European and ISO standards. It would allow meter manufacturers to give a 25-year guarantee that particulate matter will not affect the meters. It also has a facility to allow the periodic servicing of the meter in 3 minutes without interfering with the integrity of the meter. Semi-skilled operatives such as a meter reader can do it. This part of it will not be shown to you today, but my MP John Penrose has seen me do it and will confirm that it can be done, although he won't be able to tell you how I did it. That's confidential. I'm prepared to go before any independent engineering committee to allow them to compare the present meter designs against my design and publicly say which meter complies with the standard and which is fit for purpose. Either I am right or the industry is right. We can't both be right, so let's settle this matter in full public view, and one way or the other. This problem applies not only in this country, it applies all over the world. The reason is double standards are used in the manufacturing and testing of meters. Let me show you how a water meter works. This is a measuring chamber from a standard water meter. The water enters here, or an aperture at the back, and then as the water goes in, it turns this piston around. That then turns the little spindle on the top here, and this spindle has a magnet. And that magnet now has a corresponding magnet inside the counter, and this counter has gears inside it and a register on the front which tells you how much water you've used. The trouble with these pistons, if any particles get inside the chamber, it will cause a jamming up of the piston, as can be seen in this diagram. That will cause it to run slow, or it will stop it completely. When meters are being tested, the water comes from a tank and then circulates through the test rig, as can be seen by this diagram. The water then returns into the tank. As the water enters the test rig, it goes through a 50 micron mesh filter. This removes all the particles that could damage the meters on test. When the meters have passed the test and certified, this protection is removed. The only protection the meter has is an inadequate strainer that has holes in it hundreds of times bigger than the 50 micron mesh used on the test rig. Everyone in the industry has known for years that any particle over 100 microns would affect the measuring chamber, causing it to slow down or stop. When the domestic meters are manufactured, meter companies do not test the efficiency of the strainers in their meters to see if it provide adequate protection against particulate matter. I have a sample of 100 micron mesh here. There's about 100,000 holes in this sample. Any particle over the size of one hole in this sample would stop the meter or cause it to under-record. As you can see, there's a vast difference between the size of the holes in that than there is in the strainer that is used inside the meters. Firstly, I'll demonstrate that nothing harmful will pass through the 100 micron mesh. Now I'll demonstrate how inadequate the strainers are used in present meters. When the meter is on test, these useless strainers play no part in the test. Why not, you may ask? It's very simple. They don't want meters to work for 20 years. It's bad for business and there's a lot of money to be made in meter failures and replacements. Meters are deliberately designed to break down. Another point the public should know, standards authorities such as British and European standards don't write the standards. They're written by manufacturers. It's a self-regulation, therefore always open to abuse. And the standard written for domestic meters is an ill-defined and illegitimate standard. Meter testing is the equivalent of a car manufacturer testing cars in the factory with air and petrol filters fitted to the engine, then removing the filters just before it leaves the factory, knowing it will cause the car to break down. If the car manufacturers did that, there would be uproar. No one notices what's happening with the water meter because the members of the public don't come into close contact with them, and no one gets hurt. You just pay the bills and the politicians don't want to stop it. A few years ago there was an EU recommendation titled Revised Meter Manufacturers Installation Instructions, European Standards Committee CP/30/7/1. It stated, due to the normal filtration processes of the water supply, also because of circumstances beyond our control, gritty particles are naturally found in all water flows. To ensure that the meter works in accordance with revised European standards, also to maintain its maximum accuracy and reliability, it is imperative that the meter measuring element is protected by a 100 micron stainless steel mesh strainer fitted upstream of the meter. All guarantees will be null and void if these instructions are not strictly adhered to. It ended up in the European standard as EN 14154/1, Water Meters Part 1, General Requirements. 4.6. Protection against solid particles. If the accuracy of the water meter is likely to be affected by the presence of solid particles in the water, turbine and displacement type water meters for example, it should be provided with a strainer or filter. There was no mention of a 100 micron mesh. All that's gone. No change to the design. They changed the standard to fit the design. That's the easy way out. The same type of useless strainer is used today as it was 20 years ago. There are two types of mechanical domestic meter, the inline and the manifold meter. There is also another meter generally referred to as a smart meter. It should rightly be called an electronic or fluidic meter, but I'll go into that later. Here are some diagrams of current meters. This is one type of inline meter. The water comes in here and brings the particles in with it, and when the water stops it begins to pile up at this point here. There's the strainer, so when the water comes in next time, any particles that are in this area here agitates, and of course it goes through the strainer and gets into the measuring chamber. This measuring chamber then has a drive on here which then drives another gear there, and that turns the counter. This is another type of inline meter. The water comes in here, it comes underneath the measuring chamber, But any debris that is left in the bottom here, again it gets agitated each time the water comes in and is forced through the strainers and gets into the measuring chamber. It then comes through the measuring chamber and on the outlet. Sometimes inline meters are mounted on their side. The water comes in here, but the debris settles at this point here. Then when the water comes in next time, it disturbs the debris and it goes in through the filter and into the measuring chamber. This is a manifold meter, and that's the valve. It is usually in the meter box outside in the pavement. The water comes in here, goes through the bottom of the meter, through that strainer in the side there, over the top into the measuring chamber and then back down through. But the strainers there are so wide the particles are driven over the top and into the measuring chamber. This is the manifold meter mounted inside. It has just a normal manifold. The stop tacks are on either side, but it still works exactly the same way. The particles get up through the top and then go into the measuring chamber and stops the meter. In 1994, Schlumberger, one of the biggest manufacturers in the world, carried out tests on all domestic meters available at the time. This is their report. It concluded none of the meters, including their own, could cope with particles over 100 microns. In other words, they were not fit for purpose. They recommended a filter based on what I had produced to solve the problem. This report was presented to the Society of British Water Engineers, SBWI, in Leamington Spa in October 1994. This is written evidence that the industry and government know about this problem for at least 17 years. I know that is true because I wrote to the Minister for DEFRA at the time and he ignored my warnings. Meter manufacturers are knowingly selling a product with a built-in fault that is likely to cause it to break down or under-record. I believe this is illegal under the Sale of Goods Act and the meter cannot be fit for purpose. However, to get this stopped, someone has to complain and no one will except me. On screen now is a diagram of my version of the Schlumberger test rig. The difference between their test rig and mine is they use a 450 litre tank of water and they put in 500 grams, half a kilo of grit in the water. This amount of grit was used based on years of experience, having seen the amount of debris in meters that have been in service. I use a 45 litre water tank, 10% of the size, and in theory could use 50 grams of grit in the water. However, the maximum amount of grit I've ever used is 20 grams. That is 60% ratio reduction of grit per litre of water that Schlumberger used. In this test at first, I will use only approximately 10 grams of grit. That is an 80% reduction of grit per litre of water that Schlumberger used in their test. In theory, the meters should last longer in this test than they did on the Schlumberger test. The difference between my demonstration and theirs is I test the efficiency of present meters against a meter I have modified to overcome these problems. As you can see, there is a 45 litre tank of water and the meters are working correctly. The one on the right is a brand new meter and has never been used before today, and my modified design is on the left. The brand new meter is an excellent design and will work for 20 years on a test rig with no problems. It is when you install it into the distribution that the problems start. There's a little bit of head loss on my design because it is the first prototype and the new components inside are machine made and have sharp edges. This test has nothing to do with head loss. It is to see which design can cope with particulate matter best of all. There will be no head loss with my design when it's in production. Now I will put in approximately 10 grams of grit into the water and using the stick stir it all up. I've been told I'm very good at stirring things up. Keep your eyes on the meters and see which one stops first and how long it takes before it breaks down when I stir up the water. That took less than 10 seconds and yet the ratio of grit per litre of water was reduced by 80%. The grit was divided between 2 meters and I didn't have control over which way it went. You will also see that most of the sand is still at the bottom of the tank. Now I turn the valve off, leading it to the broken meter, and direct the rest of the water and grit towards my modified design. I will also add another 10 grams of sand to the water and stir that in to make the test a bit tougher for my meter. Now you can see all the grit has gone into my meter, but it's kept working. My meter is fit for purpose, the other one isn't. My design works and the other one doesn't. When the present meters break down, they're thrown away. You can't repair them or reuse them. It costs £70 or more for each one to be replaced. If the meter has an automatic readout system, AMR system, the total replacement could be over £100. 8 million meters are already installed and should be replaced, and it will cost £500 million. If the whole country, 28 million properties, were metered and we replaced all of them every 12 years, as one company intends to do, this would cost approximately £1.96 billion every 12 years, adding over £160 million per annum to water bills. I'm trying to stop these extra costs being imposed on the public, but it's up to the public to decide whether to back me or not. The public in other countries should also consider whether they want to have the problems we have in the UK, because their meters will also fail. I asked 3 questions of our 650 MPs in Parliament. What are you going to do about the 8 million substandard meters already installed? Who's going to pay to replace them? What are you going to do to stop this scam? Over the last 20 years I've written to DEFRA, British Standards, European Standards, Trading Standards, meter manufacturers, Ofwat and anyone else who I thought would listen. None of them wanted to know. They won't let me speak to parliamentary committees or ministers because none of them want this scam to become public knowledge or stopped. All the government departments have passed the buck from one department to another for the last 17 years. Not one department is interested in having meters work accurately to cut the costs, and they should be. It's deception. So I'll ask a 4th question of the MPs who wouldn't listen to me last time and those who won't listen to me this time. Why the hell did you go into politics if it wasn't to serve the public? I recently wrote to the Minister for DEFRA, who oversees the water industry and its regulations, pointing out the losses being added to the water bills, and was told to go to BISS. More passing the buck. This illustrates how ignorant and arrogant these people are. They still haven't learned anything from the last 4 years when the public tore them apart. They don't have a clue about the departments they are running and refuse to face up to their responsibilities. You cannot have a well-run water industry properly regulated if you don't know how much water the public are using. Water is becoming critical all over the world due to population increase, including this country, and less than half of 1% of the water on this planet is potable water. Look at this chart. I don't want the British, European or ISO meter standards to be changed, but I do believe it is the government's responsibility to legislate to ensure that meter manufacturers comply with the regulations. Manufacturers should guarantee their meters are fit for purpose and work as efficiently when installed as they do on their test rigs. If they don't, there is no point installing them. If no one abides by the rules, there's no point having European or ISO standards. If MPs claim they didn't know what was going on before they saw this video, they know now. I have sent out 986 emails to them direct and to their constituency offices. They are all involved and responsible to their constituents for what happens next. We have a water metering system that has cost the public approximately £1 billion so far, and not one water company knows how many of their meters are working correctly or if they're working at all at any one time. It has taken 20 years to get this far, and you lot in Parliament have ignored all the warnings long enough. My advice to all the governments of developing countries, especially China, India and Brazil, who are buying water meters in large quantities, don't make the same mistakes we have in the UK. Make sure that the meters you install can cope with the particulate matter you will inevitably have in your water supply. Make sure that your meters are serviceable without interfering with the integrity of the meter. To make sure that they are all aware of my claims, I will be writing to every ambassador I can think of, advising them to look at this video. All mechanical products require maintenance if you're to get good service from them, even something as basic as a wheelbarrow. The domestic water meter is no exception. None of the mechanical domestic volumetric water meters are fit for purpose and cannot be serviced regularly. As the present meters stop or under register, they have to be thrown away. Therefore, don't buy them, and then you won't have the problem. Make sure if you install them that the meter manufacturers guarantee they will work as efficiently with particulate matter in the water as they do on their test rigs. Make them demonstrated to your experts before you buy them. Approximately 18 years ago, an electronic or fluidic meter was introduced to the market. It didn't catch on in the UK and was quite rightly rejected by the House of Lords Water Management Committee in 2006. Hopefully my objection helped to get it rejected. The public should be wary of the designs because they are less accurate and twice as expensive as mechanical meters. The inaccuracy can be up to 70% at low flow, and if the water is leaking at only 7.5 litres per hour, they won't register at all. They also fail for other reasons, and this could mean more estimated leakage figures. They were introduced into the market because they are unaffected by particles in the water. What they don't inform the public is they pass all the particles from the distribution system into the customer's water system because there's no strainer in them, and these particles could damage the householders' domestic appliances and central heating systems. My latest design, if it ever gets produced, uses a 50 micromesh filter, giving a better quality of water and allows a 25-year guarantee that meters are unaffected by particles. We could have accurate mechanical water meter at a much lower cost than electronic meters. A good low-cost mechanical meter will outperform an electronic meter anytime. Just because the smart meter literature claims it is high-tech, it doesn't mean to say it's better. High-tech doesn't necessarily mean progress. I'm a lone voice shouting about this scam. Hopefully some of the developing countries will take action to stop meter failures in their country, even if they won't listen in the UK. I sincerely believe that it will save your country hundreds of millions of pounds over the years and improve the quality of your water. Some people will accuse me of complaining because I want to make money out of this new concept because the market is worth £1 billion per annum. I hope those who watch this video will understand there is more to it than that. There is a problem, and I believe I have a low-cost solution. It would be nice to make some money out of it, but there isn't a snowball's chance of me in hell of me doing so. The metering companies have a monopoly. They are foreign owned. I will not be too popular with them for exposing the faults in their designs and their corrupt practices, or with our government departments for proving they are equally corrupt. For me to set up in competition with them would cost millions, and there would be no help from the UK government, whichever party was in power. They have their noses stuck up the backsides of foreign multinationals so far you can't see their bootlaces. That's why the foreign multinationals fund our political parties. The suggestion from DEFRA Minister to contact BISS to for start-up money is idiotic and ludicrous, and she knows it. This is all about regulating the industry. If I could develop the design, water companies would only allow me to submit a tender if I had a full range of meters, and that would cost hundreds of millions. That illustrates the pressure put on them by meter manufacturers. The last time I tried to introduce one of my products to the industry, I know that one of the meter companies threatened the water companies. They told them, if you use his design, we will not be prepared to repair your distribution meters, and we will not supply you with spare parts. So they have total control over the industry. Also, water companies have long-term contracts with the meter manufacturers, and it would take years to break into the market. Meter manufacturers don't want a meter that will last for 25 years anyway, because it's bad for business. It also drains more money out of the UK and other countries, and our government condones the practice. Most will not even sign a confidentiality agreement, and having seen the design they will either copy it or infringe the patents, and they will tell me to fight them in the courts. That is very expensive and unaffordable, especially if you are fighting companies overseas, and my pension doesn't quite stretch to that sort of expense. So you're left with trying to license to a company who will probably try to cheat you anyway if you ask for money. They will have all their patent agents working overtime to find a way around your patent, or deliberately say they have found an alternative and then tell you to fight them in the courts. Another alternative would be to get the patents off you and then shelve the idea, telling you it didn't work. There is no protection for individual inventors or designers. The government offers no assistance and don't care what happens to them or their designs. That is one reason why we've become a third world country. There seems to be a mental blockage with the management of multinational companies. They look upon the inventor as the enemy. It's more important for the management to get rid of him so they can put their own stamp on the product rather than working with the inventor to make sure it's right. There is also a lot of envy involved because they think the inventor may make some money out of it, and that sticks in their throat more than anything. It's jealousy. They are also annoyed because their own staff should have thought of the idea in the first place. We are not the enemy. If they treat inventors with respect, should the inventor come up with another design, having been treated well, they would get the first crack at it. This would help them to keep their people employed. So I will give some advice to UK inventors, designers who think they have an idea that has world potential. If you've less than £1 million spare cash in your piggy bank, forget it. Irrespective of what you hear from government ministers saying wanting entrepreneurs, don't listen. They don't give a damn about you or your design, but if your patent runs out and a foreign multinational brings it to the market, then the government will give them all the help they want. It is best if you forget it, and if you've already put in a patent application, withdraw it and make sure that the patent office do not allow anyone access to it. You design products so you can make money, not someone else. Just in case you don't know, there are people searching lapsed patents in patent offices that may be useful to another company, and they will exploit your ideas by selling your design to them. The patent office will keep your withdrawn patent on record on their computer for 7 years. Hopefully their computers are secure, because there's been a lot of intellectual property stolen from the UK in the last few years. I trust the staff at the Intellectual Property Office implicitly, but I don't trust politicians, and many of them are in the pay of foreign companies. I have decided that if no European company wants to cooperate with me on my design by January the 31st, 2012, I will try to give it to, including the patents, to a Chinese company. I won't ask them for any money, but if they want to give me some, I will accept it. The Chinese are trying to break into the European market, and hopefully this design will help them to compete with the European manufacturers, and that will give me a lot of pleasure. I would look upon it as a repayment for their idiotic attitude over the last 20 years. The Chinese have the money to tackle the European and world metering companies head on. I believe within a few years with my design they could make a big impact on the market fairly quickly. I would work tirelessly to assist this to happen. If I am right, this will cost British and European jobs, but don't blame me. If a reputable European meter manufacturer wishes to work with me on this new design under a confidentiality agreement, they can contact me. I won't do it unless they sign a confidentiality agreement. Thank you for listening.